Dear students, welcome to this series of lecture under Literature 101, Introduction to Prose Fiction. Before now, we have looked at some elements of prose fiction. We've looked at elements like plot, setting, characters, or characterization. In this series, we are going to look at some other elements of prose fiction. It's still expected of you to be able to identify the elements of prose fiction and then explain each of them. You are expected to be able to use the knowledge you will gain through this lecture to analyze prose fictional works that you may lay your hands on. To apply these features while analyzing any narrative work. Let's progress. The first we are going to look at out of the elements of prose fiction in this series is called point of view. Another name for point of view is narrative technique. As the name is point of view, we can practically describe it from this angle. If someone is in a room with another person sitting opposite direction to each other, the two of them, these individuals in the room, will have the view of the room where they are sitting. But if they will be asked to describe what they can see in the room where they are, it is the part where they are focused that each of them will be able to describe. The other person whose back is turned towards the direction of the other person may not see what the other person can see, and vice versa. So the what point of view, from what angle does the narrator of a narrative work narrate a story? From what angle? How does he narrate a story? That's why when we talk about point of view, we talk about the perspective from which the story is told. If two people will be asked to narrate a story of an event they once took part in, it is expected of them to narrate the event very well. But no matter how good they will narrate the story, they will never narrate that same story the same way. They will each person, each narrator will narrate what he has to narrate from the angle he or she has seen it. That's why in the analysis of any narrative text, it is important for the person criticizing the narrative work to see the work or analyze the work using the point of view of the writer of the work. Thus, point of view determines the relationship between the narrator and the event and the characters of the story. We have different types of narrative uh, technique or point of view. Those that are common among them are the ones that are listed here. The first one is called first person narrative technique or first person point of view. In this case, the person narrating the story is one of the characters in the story, and the person will show this by making use of first person pronouns like I, we, me, us. So this will let the reader know that the person who is narrating the story is actually the major character in the story. For example, if you look at the book African Child by Kamara Laye, the story, the point of view that the author used in narrating the story is a first person narrative technique or first person point of view, because the major character, the person narrating the story, he is the major character in the story. He is part of the story. The story is seen from the perspective of the narrator of the story as one of the characters in that story. The second one is third person limited narrative technique or point of view. In this case, the narrator is not part of the story, but he narrates the story from the angle of one of the characters in the story. He creates the character and makes the character and make the character act in a way through which other issues or individuals, characters that are involved in that story are known through that third person narrative technique. So we can hear the word like he or she. The third one is third person omniscient narrative technique. In this case, the narrator is seen as a god. That's why this type of narrative technique or point of view is also called eye of God point of view or eye of God narrative technique. The person who wrote the work, who wrote the story, knows everything about all the characters in the story, including what is going on in the mind of each of the characters, how each of the characters feels, how what they think, how each of the characters sees life. So the narrator sees every one of them and narrates them individually from their individual perspectives. So it's more or less like the one, like a god who created the characters and make them to relate with one another according to individual personality or personalities. So the author knows even the inner thoughts of the character. When the character is thinking, when the character is imagining, when the character is planning something, the author knows and describes that character according to all these characteristics. So we have identified three common points of view, which are first person narrative technique, in which the major character is the one narrating the story. But in the case of the third person limited character, the author narrates the story from the angle of one of the characters in the story. He makes the third person in the story to be part of the story, and then every other person in that story is known through that character. The third one is third person, omniscient narrator. Omniscient, all knowing God. He knows everything about every character in the story, including their thoughts. So we have pronouns like he, she, they, them, her, him, and so on. We have theme. Theme is the underlying message, central idea, or insight conveyed by the story. What is the major issue? That's the story. What are the things the readers are expected to go home with after they have read a story? After a novel or a narrative work has been read by an individual, what are the lessons that individual is expected to learn from the story he or she has read? These lessons have to do with the themes. It is the broader concept or universal truth that the author explores through the narrative. What is the universal truth issue that the author wants the reader to add to his or her ideology, to believe or to look into. So when we talk about theme, we, themes can be in the form of morality, philosophy, society, emotion, and the rest of them. So it is the actual message that make up or that makes up the story. So in a story, we can have theme of love, theme of politics, theme of gender, theme of friendship, theme of hate, and so on. The next one is style. As mentioned earlier, two people may describe the same event, but no matter how close the individuals describing an event may be, they cannot write the same way. Each person has his or her unique way of writing. That's what we call individual idiosyncrasy. What makes a particular author to be unique, to be different from other authors. No matter how closely related individuals who are writers may be, they will never write the same way. Every writer has his own way of choosing word, the kind of grammatical structure he likes using, the kind of tone he uses, the kind of figurative language, the kind of style that he would like to make use of. Some will decide to start their story from the beginning to the middle to the end. Some will start from the end, come back to the beginning using flashback, come to the middle and then to the end cyclically. So when we talk about style, we are talking about what makes one author to be different from other authors. What are the features in a particular author's works that make him to be unique, uniquely different from any other author based on the choice of language of his, the kind of structural arrangement of sentences he likes using, the tone and the figurative expressions that can be found in the work of such an individual. So his style contributes to the overall atmosphere. Somebody who is like a comrade who is always looking for defending people's rights, who is always aggressive and so on. By the time the person writes, that aggression will reflect. The choice of words he will make will be words that will be showing that this person is aggressive. He may not mention anything like aggression, we'll go and fight, we'll go and do this one, we'll go and defend them. No. But the words he put together to express himself are what we portray his intent, what he likes to do. So the style of an author is what makes the author to be different. When someone has got used to reading Wole Soyinka's work, by the time he picks up uh, Chinua Achebe's work, nobody will tell him before we know that this work is different from Wole Soyinka's work. This work is Chinua Achebe's work. This one is Femi Osofison's one. This one is Wole Soyinka's work. This one is Ngogi Wateogo's work. This one is Femi Osofison's work, and so on. So style is very, very important. That is what makes an individual author to be unique, different from other individuals who write the same genre of literature as like that individual. So the next one is symbolism. From symbolism, we can derive the word symbol, which involves the use of objects, which can be in the form of objects, character, settings, or events. So symbols or symbolism has to do with the use of symbols to carry out a message, to pass a message to the reader. So in many prose fictional works, we one should always expect that the author will make use or authors will make use of symbols to represent some general idea instead of coming openly to say this is where I'm going, this direction I'm going. There are some symbols that the author may allude to, may decide to make use of to represent some thoughts, some feelings, some ideologies that define a set of people, a group of people, or some of his readers. So when we talk about symbols, we are talking about use or symbolism. We are talking about the use of objects, characters, settings, or events to represent abstract ideas, concepts, or themes. So something that cannot be physically understood, we can use some symbols to represent such a thing. Therefore, symbols add depth and layers of meaning to the narrative, allowing readers to interpret and engage with the story on multiple levels. So, based on individuals' way of interpreting a particular symbol that has been used, that reader is at liberty to define or explain or interpret what he has read from his personal uh, point of view. This is where the lectures on literature 101 will end, that is introduction to fiction. We have looked at fiction, we have looked at characteristics of fiction, we have looked at what makes prose fiction, what makes fiction to be different from non-fiction. We also mentioned that when we talk about fiction, fiction can uh, have, has to do with, can be related to any of the genres of literature, inasmuch as such genre of literature is a product of someone's imagination, someone's creation. So we can have fiction that will come in the form of a poem, the one that will come in the form of a drama, and the one that will come in the form of a prose. But from the perspective of this course, we have looked at fiction from the aspect standpoint of prose, and we have seen different features of prose. We have looked at different elements of prose as well. So as we have had it in the previous lectures, some questions will come after this presentation. You are advised to go through the questions, provide right answers as best as you can, and in a situation where you are not sure of what to do, you can go back to the presentation, get some points, jot down some points, and then go back to the questions, answer the questions to the best of your ability. By the grace of God, you can also relate with your classmates through the platform provided, or send some messages to me through the same platform. I will try as much as possible to provide you with answers that are going to be satisfactory to you. Once again, thank you for listening. Till we meet, thank you. Goodbye.